We are now talking to InsideTheBirds.com staff reporter Andrew DiCecco. Andrew, what's going on, bud?
Hey, how's it going, man? Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Before we get into your Eagles, how are you feeling? How is your family doing ever since the whole COVID situation?
Wow, I really appreciate you asking me that. My family's doing well, all things considered. We were able to fortunately make it through the pandemic unscathed thus far. Just been very fortunate, man. It's obviously it's unprecedented times, but all you can keep doing is staying positive and surging forward. How about yourself?
Well, I had surgery. I had hip surgery. If everybody listens to the show, they know that I had hip surgery in September. I couldn't walk for at least a month. And while I was going to physical therapy, I caught COVID, and I had the Delta, and I was very, very sick, and I lost like 30 pounds in about a week.
Oh, man.
It was horrible. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything. And I was trying to run to the bathroom, but I couldn't walk, so I was crawling to the bathroom, if you know what I mean.
Man, I'm sorry to hear that, man, but I'm glad to hear that you're doing well now.
Absolutely. So why don't we get into your Birds? I was very excited to see this team play in the beginning of the season. I love the additions of Jordan Davis. I love the additions of A.J. Brown. This team had a very good draft. They really stood out in the offseason, one of the better standouted teams in the whole NFL. What did you think about game number 1 against the Detroit Lions? They did lose control of the game in the fourth quarter, but Jalen Hurts proved that he could be a starting quarterback in this league. And really, the offense showed up early in the game. So what did you think about the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, from an offensive standpoint, by and large, man, I thought that their execution was nearly flawless. Obviously, from the offensive line, I thought that on the left side, Jordan Mailata and Isaac Seumalo, or Landon Dickerson, excuse me, I thought that there were some opportunities there as far as protection breakdowns that they could have shored up a little bit, which caused Jalen Hurts to have to flush the pocket a little bit earlier than he would have liked and have to improvise and do things with his legs. But that's the X factor that Jalen Hurts presents, right? I mean, that's what makes him such a dynamic talent and gives the Eagles a chance to win every week. Obviously, they've added a lot of weaponry there in A.J. Brown, and you have an offensive line that is by and large one of the best in football, and you have Devonta Smith there, who's now going to be the complementary piece to A.J. Brown. So in theory, he's going to see a lot of volume moving forward as some of the attention sort of diverts away from him now. But I thought Jalen Hurts did a great job navigating the offense. I thought that was probably his best game as far as a maturity standpoint, being able to make good and swift decisions with the football, protect it, not take those big hits with his running. I mean, he carried the ball, I believe it was 17 times, so that's not necessarily something that you want to see every week. But I think he does a really good job mostly of staying out of harm's way and getting down and protecting the football, throwing it away. These are different incremental improvements that I've seen from him, and it's allowed the Eagles to really prolong drives and build really some continuity, which you really didn't see last year, as the offense was very choppy and there's a lot of 3 and outs and things like that really affected the flow. But I thought that the offense looks a lot more mature and really ready to make some noise here in the NFC.
So Devonta Smith, no catches in that game. One of our fans, Carl, also mentioning didn't have any touches either. Do you think that was more on the coaching or himself having trouble at the beginning of the year like he did last year?
No, I just think that it's going to be ebbs and flows, right? I think there's going to be weeks where Devontae's going to see his catches and is going to see catches in bunches. I think this is just the way that the game script went. There's a lot of comfortability there with Jalen and A.J. Brown. They're very good friends, and there's that if you have been paying attention at all, I don't know if any of your listeners have, throughout training camp, that has been the connection. It was always the Hurts to Brown connection, and it looked very seamless. And you almost wonder if there was anybody else out there, because that was how often they were connecting on big plays. And I just think that as everyone really starts to play together, remember the offense only played one series in the preseason, that opening series against the New York Jets. So there's a lot of moving parts, and there hasn't been a whole lot of continuity there. And the first couple weeks of the season are always a little bit turbulent in that teams are really finding their identity and really building that cohesiveness within their respective units. I think that's not talked about often enough. And I think when you look at what the Eagles have there and trying to find a way to manufacture touches for all these dynamic weapons that they have in place, I think that's really what you're seeing. And I don't know that it would be a cause for alarm. Let's say if you were someone that had Devonta Smith on your fantasy football team, I think he's going to have weeks where he has monster weeks and really takes advantage of his single coverage and things of that nature. But it just wasn't in the cards this week. That's all.
As everybody knows, we are talking to InsideTheBirds.com staff reporter Andrew DiCecco. Andrew, this defense in the fourth quarter completely died. I don't know what happened. They gave up 14 points. The Detroit Lions, a team that's really starting to grow offensively. I like what they have. I like Brown. I like their running backs. I like Swift. I like everything that I've seen. And even Jared Goff, who I'm not a big fan of. Everybody that listens to the show knows that I was never a big fan when he was drafted. He, I think, found the team that's going to take him to that next level as a quarterback. What were your thoughts to the Eagles' defense and really Detroit's offense in the fourth quarter?
Well, I think both units really ran out of gas towards the end of that game. I think that was pretty evident. And again, that goes back to the lack of repetition in the preseason. So that's a gift and a curse, right? You emerge from the preseason healthy, but you also sacrifice those crucial reps. So you're really, those first 2 weeks are essentially you're ironing out those deficiencies and working out the kinks. So that is essentially their preseason. So they're really working through a lot of things. And I think that you saw a lot of bend but don't break. And then eventually, though it was in the Lions case, they broke on that Miles Sanders 24-yard run, which was met by linebacker Derek Barnes at the middle. And then he really saw the crease behind left tackle Jordan Mailata and ran to daylight and was tackled by Jeffrey Okudah. And that pretty much, for all intents and purposes, sealed the game. But, to your point about Jared Goff being in an offense that I think accentuates his strengths, that's an interesting point because I do think that without having someone like Sean McVay presiding over him, and Sean McVay is very heavy-handed and very in the way that he manages his quarterbacks, and he has a certain way that he wants things to be done. And if you're a quarterback like Jared Goff, I don't know, sometimes that can come off as a little bit overbearing and you're thinking too much and you're not processing things as quickly and going out and playing as free as you ordinarily would. So I think right now you're seeing him really be able to turn it loose, if that makes sense, and really facilitate the ball to his weapons and just play football. I think that he's always just felt so confined to what Sean McVay wanted to do and really afraid to make a mistake and let it loose. And I think now you're seeing him play a little bit more free, if that's fair to say.
So they had a brutal injury defensively in Derek Barnett going down likely for the season, but could come back towards the end of the season, maybe. But the Eagles' edge rushers always has been a big strength for them for a while, but now all of a sudden looks like one of the bigger weaknesses on their defense with Barnett out now. So do you think they go after somebody outside, like a trade, or is there an interior piece maybe they can move around?
Yeah, defensive line going into the season, to me, never struck me as, obviously the starting unit was very formidable, but when you peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, and you see what they have there as far as depth, Derek Barnett was really a key cog in what they needed to do. And he's been oft maligned for his egregious penalties and just his lack of restraint when he's out there on the field. Sometimes he plays and commits these egregious fouls, and he hurts the team more than he helps. But he was a defensive end that started over 25 games in the NFL and was a great third edge rusher. Not to have that, now you're looking at a guy like Teron Jackson, who was a 6th-round pick out of Coastal Carolina last season. He had a fine training camp, and I really like his pro potential, but I don't know that he's ready to, sort of surge up the depth chart and be the third defensive end, which is a crucial role in this defense. They're going to ask a lot of that. You might see some Milton Williams, who was a multifaceted defensive tackle who they drafted from Louisiana Tech last year in the 3rd round. He played some defensive end last year. Could see some positional versatility again. I think they might lean on that. But I do think that they need to go out there and address the position and at least kick the tires on a guy like a Jason Pierre-Paul, perhaps a Tack McKinley or an Alex Okafor or somebody to that effect, because you need guys that have played snaps in this league. But in the same token, you want to allow someone like a Teron Jackson to grow and get those reps, because if you keep trying to find somebody to to replace him or play in front of him. How is he ever really going to get those snaps and grow as a player, right? So I think that there has to be a balance there, and but they need some experience because they're after the two starters. It gets really lean. So and for what the Eagles want to do and what Jonathan Gannon wants to run, you have to have a healthy rotation of defensive linemen.
Now, Andrew, we're going into Monday Night Football, and the Eagles are facing a team that a lot of people think could be one of the favorites to coming out of the NFC. They absolutely demolished Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers defense in game number 1, and that's the Minnesota Vikings. You're watching Jefferson turn into a superstar. Well, he was always a superstar, but he's becoming the best wide receiver in football. He's proven that now. Dalvin Cook and obviously Kirk Cousins and that offensive line. This is one of the better offensive lines in football, one of the younger offensive lines in football. What are your thoughts going into Monday Night Football against a high-flying power in the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, I think high-flying power is a proper way to really introduce the Minnesota Vikings. And the Minnesota Vikings, I've mentioned this on 97.3 ESPN during my breakdown of the different divisions before the season, and I thought that the Vikings had assembled a roster that's equipped to really make a significant playoff push based on the pieces that they had. I thought Justin Jefferson was really poised to make a serious run at being the offensive player of the year, which he was my pick to do so. And he had 9 catches for 184 yards last week and on 11 targets. And you had Dalvin Cook, who had 90 yards, and Kirk Cousins, who had 277 through the air. Alexander Madison, in my opinion, is the best backup running back in the NFL. So they have a gamut of weapons and they can beat you in a multitude of ways. And then you look at the defensive side, and they've just stocked that whole defense with bona fide playmakers at all 3 levels. So when you really look at what the Eagles are going to be up against, if you gave up 35 points to the Detroit Lions, you have to bring your A game and be ready to go, and can't afford the margin for error is going to be so small on Monday night that they're going to have to make sure that they come ready to play, because Minnesota coming into Philly, it could end up being a shootout there, and you have to wonder how they're going to contain a guy like a Justin Jefferson. We haven't even mentioned the Jalen Reagor storyline, who was, of course, the Eagles' former first-round pick who was traded to Minnesota before the season. Now, he's their punt returner right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some action on offense and really got him going to see if he can do some damage against his former team. So there's a lot of different storylines here to pay attention to, but I really do think that Minnesota, and I thought this before the season, that Minnesota is such a viable contender in the NFC this season.